Greetings, everyone. So I recently bought myself a collection of C.S. Lewis books. I was just going to buy one of his books, Mere Christianity, because I thought I live in England, I've always lived here, and I've never read anything by C.S. Lewis, who's thought to be one of the great Christian writers in this country. So I was going to buy that one book, and then I saw that they were actually offering a whole collection of his books in one for a good price. So I bought the whole collection, and I decided I'm going to read through those 7 books that I have. And so far I've read 2, and one of those is called The Great Divorce. I've got it here. And I actually initially thought it was going to be about the Reformation for some reason, but it's actually about heaven and hell. And in this book, C.S. Lewis, he writes in first person, and he's basically describing the afterlife. So he's just died, and he's seeing all these various things. He's seeing these various spirits, ghosts. He's having conversations with some of them, and he's also witnessing conversations, among others, conversations that they're having with each other. And one of these conversations is particularly interesting because it appears to be the conversation between someone who was a priest and who died, and then as he's on the other side, he sees an old friend who maybe also was a priest, I'm not completely sure, and they start talking about their life in this world. So the friend of the person who's just died recently is called Dick. He sees him, and they have this dialogue with each other that I'm going to read to you because I think it's something we're seeing now, really, and we've seen for a while now. And it's really interesting that C.S. Lewis wrote this so long ago, almost 100 years ago. So here we go. Ah, Dick, I shall never forget some of our talks. I expect you've changed your views a bit since then. You became rather narrow-minded towards the end of your life, but no doubt you've broadened out again. What do you mean? Well, it's obvious by now, isn't it, that you weren't quite right? Why, my dear boy, you were coming to believe in a literal heaven and hell. But wasn't I right? Oh, in a spiritual sense, to be sure. I still believe in them in that way. I am still, my dear boy, looking for the kingdom, but nothing superstitious or mythological. Excuse me, where do you imagine you've been? Ah, I see. You mean that the grey town with its continual hope of morning, with its field for indefinite progress, is in a sense heaven, if only we have eyes to see it. That is a beautiful idea. I didn't mean that at all. Is it possible you don't know where you've been? Now that you mention it, I don't think we ever do give it a name. What do you call it? We call it hell. There is no need to be profane, my dear boy. I may not be very orthodox in your sense of that word, but I do feel that these matters ought to be discussed simply and seriously and reverently. Discuss hell reverently? I meant what I said. You have been in hell. Though if you don't go back, you may call it purgatory. Go on, my dear boy, go on. That is so like you. No doubt you'll tell me why, on your view, I was sent there. I'm not angry. But don't you know? You went there because you are an apostate. Are you serious, Dick? Perfectly. This is worse than I expected. Do you really think people are penalized for their honest opinions, even assuming for the sake of argument that those opinions were mistaken? Do you really think that there are no sins of intellect? There are indeed, Dick. There is hide-bound prejudice and intellectual dishonesty and timidity and stagnation, but honest opinions fearlessly followed, they are not sins. I know we used to talk that way. I did it too until the end of my life, when I became what you call narrow. It all turns on what are honest opinions. Mine certainly were. They were not only honest but heroic. I asserted them fearlessly. When the doctrine of the resurrection ceased to command itself to the critical faculties which God had given me, I openly rejected it. I preached my famous sermon. I defied the whole chapter. I took every risk. What risk? What was at all likely to come of it except what actually came? Popularity, sales for your books, invitations, and finally, a bishopric. Dick, this is unworthy of you. What are you suggesting? Friend, I am not suggesting at all. You see, I know now. Let us be frank. Our opinions were not honestly come by. We simply found ourselves in contact with a certain current of ideas and plunged into it because it seemed modern and successful. At college, we just started automatically writing the kind of essays that got good marks and saying the kind of things that won applause. When in our whole lives did we honestly face in solitude the one question on which all turned? Whether after all the supernatural might not in fact occur. When did we put up one moment's real resistance to the loss of our faith? If this is meant to be a sketch of the genesis of liberal theology in general, I reply that it is mere libel. Do you suggest that men like I have nothing to do with any generality, nor with any man but you and me? Oh, as you love your own soul, remember. You know that you and I were playing with loaded dice. We didn't want the other to be true. We were afraid of crude salvationism, afraid of a breach with the spirit of the age, afraid of ridicule, afraid above all of real spiritual fears and hopes. I'm far from denying that young men may make mistakes. They may well be influenced by current fashions of thought, but it's not a question of how the opinions are formed. The point is that they were my honest opinions, sincerely expressed. Of course, having allowed oneself to drift, unresisting, unpraying, accepting every half-conscious solicitation from our desires, we reached a point where we no longer believed the faith. Just in the same way, a jealous man, drifting and unresisting, reaches a point at which he believes lies about his best friend. A drunkard reaches a point at which he actually believes that another glass will do him no harm. The beliefs are sincere in the sense that they do occur as psychological events in the man's mind. If that's what you mean by sincerity, they are sincere, and so were ours. But errors which are sincere in that sense are not innocent. And that's as much as I wanted to read. There are a few more pages of that chapter. But it's basically one man, Dick, who may well have been a priest as well, telling his friend, look, the stuff you were saying, the stuff you were preaching was wrong. It was what the world was saying. You went with the times. You got taken by the current. You had no real solid foundation. You were preaching things that the church wasn't teaching. And that is why you were sent to hell. And sadly, in our times, we do have a lot of clerics, a lot of clergy in the Catholic Church who are going down the same path, and it isn't good for not only their soul, but for the souls of the people who are listening to them and believing what they say is true. Not to say that lay people don't make many mistakes, but I think the main responsibility for a layperson is for his own soul and maybe his family and some people close to him, whereas a priest is responsible for a lot of souls. And a cardinal and a bishop, even more souls. So when they start doing things and saying things that are wrong, they're sending a heck of a lot of people down the wrong path. Folks, it's a really interesting book, and not even that long. Quite a quick read. You can probably pick it up for a fairly decent price, or you can do what I did and buy the whole collection of C.S. Lewis books if you want. They are available, or they were at least last time when I bought them, not that long ago. On Amazon. And that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.